Hi there guys, so today we're going to have a look at Elizabeth's government and the situation in the country, the way society was structured at the beginning of Elizabeth's reign. So when she becomes queen in 1558, she inherits a government that has been, up until this point, run by Mary I's Catholic leaders. So one of the key things she needs to do is to quickly get her own leaders into place. The structure of the government was quite complicated. Elizabeth is the supreme ruler. She is the person who makes all the decisions. She does have a parliament and they do provide advice. She's got the House of Lords, which we have today, and she also has the House of Commons. But it's really important that you know that the House of Lords was mostly made up of the noblemen and bishops of the day, whereas the House of Commons was elected. But very few people could vote. For example, women were excluded from the vote. People who didn't own land were excluded from the vote. In fact, unless you were a wealthy noble, there was no way you could vote. Parliament was in charge of passing laws and approving taxes. However, they very rarely argued with the Queen. All of these laws that were passed were then put into place by the criminal system of the day. So large landowners were usually appointed justices of the peace. They were not paid for their role, and it was really in their interest to keep law and order in the local area. And they did sometimes hear local court cases. Above them, you had the Lord Lieutenants. These were noblemen who were appointed by the government and governed English courtiers. They raised local militia if needed and generally oversaw that the law was being followed in the country. Then, much closer to Elizabeth, we had the courts, which was mostly made up of noblemen. So the members of the court were usually Elizabeth's friends and her advisors, people she had specifically chosen. Their job really was to make Elizabeth look good. They showed off her wealth and they gave her advice on day-to-day matters. They could also be members of the Privy Council, which is the other key group of people who were in charge of advising Elizabeth. These were, again, nobility, Elizabeth's chosen friends. They were in charge of helping Elizabeth to make decisions about the country. They monitored Parliament, they made sure that the justices of peace and the overseers were doing their jobs and making sure that law and order and the country was secure. Okay, so Elizabethan society was very unequal. There were those who were able to vote, those who owned land. Meanwhile, there was some extreme poverty in Elizabeth's England. There were many people who were homeless or vagrants, wandering from place to place, asking for support. So once you were out in the countryside, there was a particular structure. There was the nobility right at the top of the tree, quickly followed by the gentry, who are also landed people, but they're not nobility. They're not lords and dukes and so on. They're just landowners. Below them, we've got the farmers, the people who owned their land. These people were known as yeomen. They owned their own land and they farmed their own land. But below them were the tenant farmers. These people did not own their land and they had to pay rent in order to use the land for farming. Then you get the people who have no land whatsoever, the people who do the main jobs, the labourers out in the countryside, and these people were really quite poor. And again, as I said to you, there are those homeless people and the vagrants, and people really, much as they do today, look down on these people. Towns were a little bit different to the countryside. We kind of imagine, I think, Elizabethan being this kind of placid countryside England, but it really wasn't. The social hierarchy in towns was much more based on commerce. So at the top of the tree in the towns, you've got the merchants. These are traders who become extremely wealthy. Many of them are in charge of importing and exporting, particularly exporting things like English wool, which was really marketable around the country. Below the merchants, these incredibly wealthy people were then the professionals, the people we think of being professionals today. Lawyers, doctors, and also the clergy fell into this category. Then you had some of the really highly skilled craftsmen, people who could make intricate, beautiful things. Silversmiths, tailors, carpenters, all those people then fall into that next category. These are the people who own those businesses, and below them are the people that they employ, the skilled employees of those craftsmen. And then finally, you've got, again, your labourers, and your unemployed people. People who've got no regular work. Remember, there's no contract you can get here. You can't get a permanent contract on a job. You're basically turning up every day and hoping that someone will give you a job. So in terms of obeying the law, there wasn't a police force as we know it today. There is quite simply a local watchman who sort of just basically reports on things that people are up to, and he reports to the Justice of the Peace. So he goes and he tells the Justice of the Peace what's going on, and if you're not attending church on a Sunday, or you get a bit drunk and rowdy in the pub at the weekend, you get dragged before the Justice of the Peace. If you commit crimes more serious than that, then you might go up against the courts, but usually most things are dealt with at a local level. Okay, that's everything for today. Swift introduction into Elizabethan society. Check out my other videos to see what other problems Elizabeth inherited when she became queen. I've been the history teacher. You can follow me on Twitter at @TheHistTeach. You can also email me directly if you've got any specific questions. Don't forget to subscribe and like below. And if you've got any comments or questions that you'd like me to deal with in the future, please stick them in the comments and I will be happy to help. I'll see you all next time.